Grab a seat. As a guy who grew up in the city and never raised a chicken in my life and wouldn't know how to do it if I was presented with one, I hesitate in this crowd to speak as an expert on chickens because we've got a few people in the room who actually are experts on chickens. But I want to tell you, to get us started, I want to tell you about the Super Chicken Experiment. It comes to us from Purdue University. Woo! There, I was going to say, and we just happen to have an alum or two. All right, so here's the way the Super Chicken Experiment worked. The guy's name is William Muir. He's a professor of agriculture and biology down at Purdue. And so he has a flock of chickens that, they study. And out of that flock, he lets the flock go for a while. And then it's real easy to figure out productivity with chickens. You count how many eggs they lay, right? So he out of his whole flock, he picks the top 9 egg-producing hens, says, all right, that's my super chickens. I'm going to take them and I'm going to separate them from the other chickens. And he does what every researcher does. He gets his control chickens, his control group, and they're just allowed to grow off on their own. So the 9 super chickens, he goes to so they build a flock, right? They have babies, and then those babies grow into adults. So then, from that next generation, he takes only the top 9 again. So now you have super chickens. And then he does, in the next generation, he picks out the top 9. So these are the top of the top of the top. Super chickens. He does this for 6 generations. And then he compares his control group, how many eggs does the control group lay, with his super chicken group. Now these are the best of the best. I gotta do the best of the stuff. The best of 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 the best chickens. What do you think the outcome of the experiment was? Same possibility that it was the same. Actually, the super chickens perform worse. And one of the reasons why the super chickens perform worse is because there were less of them. Because what they succeeded in breeding was a group of hyper-competitive chickens. The one researcher said, we produce bully psychopath hens who literally pecked each other to death. Now you're thinking, there's a researcher watching them peck. All in the name of science, I guess, right? I mean, it's a little gross, but so here's the chickens. You'll see which one are the super. Here, look at the top. They don't look so good. Those are the super chickens. The control group is on the bottom. They look like normal, healthy chickens. And and that group, the control group, their production did actually increase. And it increased pretty well. If you want to see how this works in human populations, go on the History Channel or open up your Netflix account and look at what I was going to leave the Congress alone on this. I thought about that. I'm like, nah, that's just, I can't go to Congress. I can't do that, but Congress. And if you look at a documentary on the American Mafia and how you kill everybody on your way to the top, and then what happens? The guy kills you on his way to the top. The other place that this gets used, and where I came across it, is in business literature and in business consulting, where they talk about to build a good, strong business and a good, strong community, you need diversity of thought. You need different ways of seeing things. You don't, if you get all the top, this, it doesn't work. Now, there's another reason why this doesn't work. And I want you to think of our faith for a second. We're diving into this summer season. Many of us are slowing down. A lot of us are taking vacations, which is perfect, which is good. The summer is that gift, and we want to lean into that gift. And we also want to take that time to spend time in the Word of God so that as we break, we stay consistent with our faith. And so we're diving into the Gospel of Luke. And we have this summer reading plan that we're doing in the Gospel of Luke. And in the Gospel of Luke, what you see is that Jesus doesn't come to seek and save the super chickens. Jesus comes to seek and save the chicken that got passed over and passed over and passed over and didn't feel like it could be part of the flock and felt like it was on the outside and felt like it could never fit in. And that in Christ, Jesus reaches out to the outcast. So the summer reading plan, if you weren't here last week, you can pick it up on your way out. I know if you were here last week, you've already got it. What we're going to do is over the next, the rest of June, all of July, and about half of August, we're going to read through the Gospel of Luke. And then we're going to read just a few chapters a week. This week we're starting with Luke chapter 1, and we're going to chapter 3, verse 20. And as we do that, we want to understand the themes that are going on, and this is why I start the Gospel of Luke with the study of the super chickens, because the Gospel of Luke is the opposite of that. So some of the themes that you will see throughout the summer as you're reading the Gospel of Luke, one, God's love is for the whole world. The whole world. And I'll explain that more in just a second. Let's land on number 2 for a second. God's love is for the lost and the outcasts. And in Jesus, that gets made very, very clear. And you see, I'm going to take a minute as we talk about the Gospel of Luke and look at the themes. Let me give you an example of this, something you to think about. When I say that Luke's Gospel, the real emphasis is on who's lost and God is seeking them, reaching for them, right, as we just sang. So think about Matthew's Gospel for a second, and who comes, I know this is one of those Bible trivias, I'll give you this, you're like, I don't know, but who comes, well, some of you do know, who comes to see baby Jesus in Matthew's Gospel? If you know it, shout it out. Okay? Wise men. In Matthew's Gospel, the wise men come. The wise men do not come in Luke's Gospel. Okay, now say, who comes in Luke's Gospel? You had a 50-50. You went with the shepherds first, it's okay, right? In Luke's Gospel, there's no wise men. There's shepherds. And notice, so learn a little bit about how we understand the Gospels and how we learn from the Gospels. Matthew has a church that he's interested in, that he's talking to. And that church, it makes it, to take the part of the story where the wise men come, Matthew's saying, okay, the people I'm trying to reach, they need to know that. Luke is saying, okay, we know the shepherds came. I have that in all these materials that I'm looking at. I have that the shepherds came. That's important for my people in my church to know, the people that I'm reaching out to. And see, we can get a lot from the Gospels if we take a look at what's in one and what's not in the other. So definitely, God's love is for the lost and the outcast. As you read this week, you will see that. We are invited to accept God's love and join the joy and celebration of life with Christ. One of the big chapters that we're going to come to, the only place that you get the parable of the prodigal son, that's the one where the boy goes away, he blows all his dad's money, and he's welcomed back home. The only place that exists is the Gospel of Luke, because Luke is all about God is seeking and saving the lost. It's also the only place that you get the parable of the Good Samaritan, because God is seeking and saving everyone, the lost. And also notice, how does that parable of the Good Samaritan end? big, fat party. As you're reading through the Gospel of Luke, you're going to see a lot of things end with a party. And they began to celebrate. And then she found her coin, and then she threw a party. He went out and got the lost sheep, and then he threw a party. His son came home, he hugged him around the neck, threw a big party. That we are invited into this celebration. That when you don't seek out the super chicken, but you get the chicken who feels, like their feathers aren't quite right, they're not plump enough, and they waddle a little funny, right? When you go get that person, and that chicken understands God's love, that's a party. That's a celebration, because the super chicken knows. They know they're good. They know they're great. And that's why they, I don't know how they do it, but you know what I mean. Would work better if I didn't use chickens as my examples this week, right? We join the celebration by loving others in the same way that God loves us. How does the parable of the Good Samaritan end? Go and do likewise. I love, if you haven't figured it out yet, I love the gospel. I love Matthew and Mark and John. And Luke, one, because they're celebrating all the time. That's fun. Okay? And two, because of how it focuses us. And the songs that we sang about, the first one about being open. And as Jesus reaches for us in the second song, right? We want to be reaching to others. We want to go and do likewise. So here's seeking and saving. That's what we're going to be doing as we look at the Gospel of Luke over the next 10 weeks, right? See, and you got to go to this one. I know on this one it's going to be a little small, but the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. We could use that as our theme verse for the whole Gospel of Luke. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. So, that's our big theme. Seeking and saving everyone. As you're reading, as this is the old school teacher in me coming out, going back to the reading classes, right? That here's how you teach kids how to read. Here's how you teach anybody how to read. Always have the big theme in the back of your mind. That's what makes the details make sense. As you're reading over the next 10 weeks, keep this in the back of your mind. This is about seeking and saving everyone. And it's the good news of the gospel means good news. It's the good news, according to Luke, about Jesus Christ. It means Jesus Christ seeks and saves. And as his followers, we join in that, but we never make the mistake that we're the ones who are doing the saving. We help Jesus seek and save by pointing people to Christ. And when we love on people, and at Capernaum Health Clinic, when they show up and they get health care that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise because the churches in this community got together, that's pointing people to Jesus Christ. When we show up at City Covenant Church and they say, you don't look like the people in our neighborhood, and we say, yep, we love you, and we break down that barrier, we're pointing people to Jesus Christ. When you bring a meal to your friend who is struggling, right? You're pointing people to Jesus Christ, who does the saving. Right? So, let's take a look at why this is about seeking and saving everyone. So Luke is the author, and he's a companion of Paul. And Paul, if you don't know, is the guy who really gets the church started in the early days. He goes out, he's outside of Jerusalem, he's outside of, where all the Jewish people are and the new Christians are, and they're comfortable because that's their home base. And he's the one who goes out across the Roman Empire. And one of his companions is Luke. And so Luke is writing to those Gentiles, those non-Jews. And what have they heard about Judaism, about this religion that the Christians are saying, look, we're fulfilling, Jesus fulfills this Jewish idea. If you were in the Roman Empire, what you heard about the Jewish people were you weren't one of them. And you were on the outside, and you didn't belong, and you didn't fit with them, right? They were a separate group, and they tried to maintain their separateness. And in Luke's gospel, he's reaching out to those people, and he's letting them know, no, the Son of Man came to seek and save everyone. You're part of the everyone. It doesn't matter, right, how far you think you are from God. God loves you, came for you, is embracing you. So that's the audience. So let's start with the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verse 1. And what we're going to do each week is, so you see, as I said, you're going to go from 1:1 to 3:20. We will start, myself, our associate pastor Dave, Phil's going to be up one of the weeks. We'll do a little section of it so that you got a flavor of it as then you then lean into it during the week and you read it. All right? So here's how it starts. Here's Luke. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Now let's break that down and let's understand what's going on there. First, they were handed down to us. And they were handed down to Luke, who of course is very close to the time of Jesus Christ. And they've been handed down now to us. One of the reasons why we go to the scriptures is we go to the scriptures to learn who Jesus was, to learn how we follow Jesus, to learn what it means that Jesus saves us, to learn what it means how we surrender to that Savior. Now, why we trust it is because it was handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. The apostles. Luke himself is not an apostle, but he's hanging out with the apostles. So he's getting this from the eyewitnesses, from the people who saw the events, from the people who were there. And if you ever ask yourself the question, sometimes, I just suggested go to History Channel and watch a mafia documentary. If you go to the History Channel and you see some of the things about, well, there's this book that they left out of the Bible and that book that they left out of the Bible. And they'll do a little, documentary. How do they pick the books that are in and how do the books stay out? The books that are in have this aspect to them. It's either directly from an apostle or from someone who is with an apostle and is working together with an apostle. So Luke and Paul are working together, and Luke is with those eyewitnesses. The farther you get from that generation, the less likely the church was able to say, hey, we want keep this in the Holy Scripture. We're not saying it's not a good book. We're just saying we're not gonna say that that's part of the Bible. All right? So he's writing it down, right? Why is he writing it down? He's investigated everything from the beginning. So I too decided to write an orderly account for you. And who is he writing it to? Most excellent Theophilus. Who is, that simply means to the friend of God. I'm writing to the friend of God. So you're going to be reading this week and say, oh, he's not writing to me. He's writing to Theophilus. If maybe I'm saying that right, maybe I'm not. I don't know, but he's writing to you. He's writing to me. If we say we give our lives to Jesus Christ, if we call ourselves Christians, and what do we say? It's a relationship. It's about friendship with God. Okay, so if you're a friend of God and you're in relationship with Jesus Christ, this letter is to you. If you're examining that, if you're saying, well, I don't know, I don't know that I follow Jesus, I don't know that that's who I am, you'll want to read the letter because this will tell you, hey, what does it look like to be in relationship with Christ? How does that play out? So the two keys as we start is one, knowing. And that's where we finish with this quick verse, right? So that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Luke writes this down so that all the friends of God who are not in Jerusalem, but they're spread out across the Roman Empire, they're in places like Rome, and maybe even all the way over in Spain, which would have been far for them, but that they will know that Jesus is real, that Jesus has come, and that in Jesus' program, if you will, the way Jesus does things, he seeks and saves everyone. So that's the knowing, but you may notice that I said there's two keys as we start. So the first is knowing. So if you don't know, if you don't say that you're in that friendship with Christ, it's good to read. If you are in that relationship, great to read, because it shows you what that relationship looks like. So, what's the other piece about knowing? Well, let's take a look at one of the characters you're going to see this week, and this character is Mary. Now, what's fun about the first 3 chapters, well, you're going to do the first, 2 and a little bit of chapter 3 this week. What's fun about those first couple of chapters is there's just people all over the place. It's not just theological ideas. There's people, and they're interacting with God, and they're interacting with love, and all the themes are going to be there. God seeking and saving the lost, God seeking and saving everyone. It's a party. You'll see a party this week when Jesus is born and the angels get in on it, right? And you'll see a party this week when the people sitting in the temple, these older people, Anna and Simeon, they see Jesus, and suddenly a party just breaks out right in the worship service. Yeah. And here's Mary. You'll see all those themes as you look at Mary. You will see the theme that Jesus is seeking and saving everyone. So, Mary's story obviously works like this. She has this encounter with the angel, and the angel is saying to her, you've been chosen to bring God's love into the world, and here's how the plan's going to play out. Now, stop. Take a step back. The mistake we make with Mary is that we've got her as a statue, we've got her as a picture, we've got her as this, her expression never changes, right? It's always very somber. And maybe sometimes we get her with, even when she's holding baby Jesus, it's a somber look, right? And so we think of this as this otherworldly thing that's happening. The divine comes to the human and says, I want my love to come into the world through you. And say, oh wow, isn't that nice? Back up. That same exchange is happening to you right now. God comes to us and says, will you allow my love to come into the world through you? That is not some event that happened 2,000 years ago to some girl who's now a statue. That's an event that happens to you and me on a daily basis. And as you dive into the gospel and you dive into it like that, because it's to you friend of God. It's to you. And so if we respond, how did Mary respond? First, well, how did she respond? Same way you respond. That might be the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. God's love coming into the world through me. How can that be? She said. Did anybody say, how can that be that God's love is coming into the world through me? Do you know me? Ask my spouse if that's a good idea, right? Or worse, ask my ex-spouse if that's a good idea, right? But, so Mary had all those doubts. But then, what is her response? And never forget this. When Mary is a statue, we forget the most important thing about Mary. Mary had a choice. But when she's static, and she's still, and she's plastic or concrete, and she can't do anything, she doesn't have a choice. Mary had a choice. You have a choice. I have a choice. So, may we choose to respond as Mary did. I am the Lord's servant. Mary answered, may your word to me be fulfilled. I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. So, look at the two keys as we dive into the gospel. And prayers, wherever you are in your journey, if you say, I'm not even on the journey, this would be great to dive into. Because you'll get an idea of what the journey looks like. If you've been on the journey for 50 years, notice the two keys are not know and surrender, because that becomes a one-time action that you did at some point when you tell people about, when you share your story. Notice the two keys are knowing, the continuing action of knowing, and the continuing action of surrender. That on a daily basis I surrender, and on a daily basis we might have the courage to say, not how can that be, but I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as yours. So, I'm asking you to commit to the summer reading challenge. Have fun with it. I'm going to say what I said last week. For those of you who have read through the Gospel of Luke 30, 40, 50 times, read it a different way this time. Use the journaling questions. There's 3 sets of journaling questions. Use those, especially for the people who have done it a bunch of times. One time you're going to read through the eyes of Jesus. Next time I want you to read through the eyes of Jesus' opponents. We can learn a lot by focusing on who's against Jesus and what are they thinking, and then ask the question, do I think the same thing? And the shocking thing is when you do it that way, at least it always should. I'm like, oh boy, I do. And then what do? Now that I know, I'm called to surrender. And it's that continuous action of God in our lives. And then the third one, we say we're friends of God, we say we want to be disciples. What did the disciples look like in this? What did they get right? A more fruitful answer would be, what did they get wrong? You'll get a lot more info, right? That's okay, that's who we are too. And then as we come to know, then what do? We surrender. If you guys are half as excited as I am about this, it's going to be a blast, okay? So please dive into it and have fun with it, and let's continue to talk.